Hello, everyone. Welcome. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mars Groves. I am a cybersecurity professional based in the United States here in Orange County, California. I am the founder and cybersecurity content writer for Groves Press, serving cybersecurity companies around the globe. And I'm also an advisor for WebGap, a cybersecurity startup specializing in browser isolation, and I'm in charge of outreach for higher education, universities, and students alike. And I'm currently giving away free WebGap to students. I was also the former editor-in-chief for SecJuice, and last but not least, I was a cybersecurity engineer intern here at VTF last year in 2022, which, by the way, was a wonderful learning experience. And today, I will be talking about the MITRE ATT&CK framework. But before I begin, I'd like to give a special shout out to Mr. Victor Monga for providing opportunities to students and anyone around the globe who want to level up their cybersecurity knowledge and skills. So now that you got to know a little bit more about me, today you're in luck because you'll get to know a lot more about MITRE ATT&CK, which I will be talking about shortly hereafter. So let's get started. For today's agenda, I will be discussing the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations. I will be explaining what it is, what it's used for, including its origins, who can use it, who it can be used on, how it's used, and why it's even meaningful in threat intel, as well as a bit about the pyramid of pain and show how to map on the attack matrix on the navigator. And of course, I will provide a use case based on a real-world scenario. But before I begin that, I want to give a little background overview on what I feel is important to know about before getting straight into the nitty-gritty of MITRE ATT&CK. And that is talking about intelligence and cyber threat intelligence, and explaining the key differences between data, information, and intelligence, a little bit about the intelligence analysis and intelligence-driven IR process, and as well as explain about the intelligence life cycle and why it matters. And of course, a bit about the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, which was the framework that came out before MITRE ATT&CK and has played an influence on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And it is a framework that identifies and prevents cyber intrusions activity, which has military roots. It comes from the military kill chain, and you can see from the 7 phases of the cyber kill chain how it has influenced the very early stages of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So that is why, instead of going straight into the MITRE ATT&CK framework, I will be talking a little bit about intelligence and the cyber kill chain. So let's continue. A lot of people get confused with the differences between data, information, and intelligence. So let me explain the key differences between the three. Data is a piece of raw facts or a statistic. It describes what something is. It's more of like the numbers. It's something that's measured. It can be the time, 12 o'clock on the dot. It can be the temperature, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, a bunch of ones and zeros, metadata, so on and so forth. It just describes what something is. It doesn't tell a story. It doesn't explain much. It's just very straightforward, right? And information is the collection of processed data from a variety of sources that can answer everyday questions like why, who, what, where, and how. So whenever you Google a lot of things on the internet, most of your Google searches are finding information, right? You probably Google what is the latest ransomware that came out last week, or which APT groups are based in China. That's information. Even finding out the scientific name of a specific bird is just another example. And intelligence is a combination of information into a form that tells a story that informs decisions. So an example can be, let's say an enemy has been detected on our radar and our military says, okay, they're very close. We know this. We see on the radar. We have enough information that tells us a story, and now it's time for us to attack. Or it can be an APT group that has been identified in a network, and now we know that our security team has to mitigate that APT group that is now in our network. So those are the differences between data, information, intelligence. But what really separates data from intelligence is analysis. Intelligence derives from the process of collecting, processing, and analyzing data so that it provides insight and becomes useful or actionable. And what is cyber threat intelligence, or CTI? It's the analysis of adversaries' capabilities, motivations, and goals, including how they use the cyber domain to accomplish their goals or their objective. Remember when I said that the difference between intelligence and data is the analysis part? Well, here we are talking about cyber threat intelligence and how it's the analysis of basically what an adversary does. And this is very important when you start using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, because it really relies on understanding an adversary's capabilities, what their goals are, and what their motivations may be. And the purpose of cyber threat intelligence, or any intelligence in general, is analyzing, again, the word analyze, collected external information from a variety of sources against existing requirements. I'm going to explain a little bit about requirements in a bit soon, but it's basically a question in order to provide an assessment that will affect decision making. Because if you want to get proper solutions, you need to start asking the proper questions first. Because cyber threat intel is the analysis of an adversary's capabilities, motivations, and goals, it gives us insight on the adversary and helps us know what to look out for. And through analyzing, we can narrow things down and figure out what the adversary is likely to do. And this is very important when we start utilizing CTI with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Because with our cyber threat intel, or CTI, we can begin plugging in on the MITRE ATT&CK framework or matrix what the adversary is likely to do or has done. And by doing this, we can gain a more accurate visual representation of the adversary and their behaviors. And in turn, it will help us utilize it for the intrusion, detection, and incident response, or IR process, also known as intelligence-driven incident response. Because think about it. If you have a greater understanding of your adversary, you will have a better idea of how to detect the moves they make, because they probably have their signature moves that they like to do a lot. And you also have a better understanding of how to respond to an adversary when an incident occurs, because you already know what they're most likely to do, giving you time to plan and prepare via adversarial simulations to respond accordingly, for example. So let's say, for example, you work for an MSP and your security team gathered really great cyber threat intel on a particular threat actor who is not necessarily high level, but they've been notable for targeting retail companies and compromising their systems with ransomware for financial gain, which is their goal, their objective. They're after the money, basically. And you have a situation with one of your clients, let's say a mid-sized retail business, and your security team now knows how to detect and respond to this threat actor, because they've dealt with this particular threat actor before. So detect and respond, hence intelligence-driven incident response. In contrast, let's say your security team works for the US government and it's elections week, and your team noticed some funny things going on in the government system, so they gathered some really great cyber threat intel that indicates a particular nation state threat actor may be tampering with the systems because they have political goals to mess with the US government because they don't like us or whatever reason. And you can plug that intel into the MITRE ATT&CK framework, because you know who this, APT group must be, this nation state threat actor, and start getting a visual representation of what they are likely to do, and knowing that they're high level, and things of that nature, which can help you with, the intelligence-driven incident response. But I do want to emphasize one thing that I want to be clear here on is that we need to be mindful of our cognitive biases because they can have implications on your cyber threat intel. And what I mean by that is that we can become clouded by our cognitive biases. Like correlation doesn't always mean causation, for example. Some of these philosophical razors, such as Occam's razor or the Hanlon's razor, which is a philosophical razor that simply means never attribute to malice that which can be explained by stupidity, can actually impact your cyber threat intel and your decision making. So I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole right now for the sake of time, but I just want you to be aware that because we're human, we all have cognitive biases, and we need to be aware of them when we are being clouded in our judgment by these cognitive biases. Because as humans, we are all biased to a degree. And by having this understanding, we can also remember that we cannot just jump the gun and assume that a particular threat actor is so on and so forth when we're gathering cyber threat intel. For example, when you seek what you only think about sometimes. So perhaps you might have this bias to only look for a particular threat actor because of your cognitive biases instead of just looking at the data and the information from a very objective viewpoint. So that's something to keep in mind. Cognitive biases, you're free to research all the different varieties of cognitive biases out there, the different philosophical razors or what we call decision-making razors out there. And so let's move on to the next slide. Earlier I mentioned what separates data from intelligence is analysis, right? And intelligence analysis is based on a series of requirements or intelligence requirements, also known as IR, which provides direction for an intelligence analyst to gather and collect information. It's very important for the first stage of the intelligence life cycle, which is planning and direction, which I'm going to get into a little bit soon. And the thing about intelligence requirements is you must only focus on one question, because you don't want to get muddled with so many questions that's going to be confusing. You want to narrow things down, right? And that one question should focus on a specific fact, event, or activity. Because like I said, if you ask too many questions, you can get lost in the sauce. Furthermore, requirements provide the intelligence required to support a decision that needs to be made. Let's say by the CISO, for example. And you can start narrowing it down your requirements by asking the who, what, why, when, where, or even how, of course. And requirements definitely do play a significant role when you start collecting your cyber threat intel and you use that CTI in conjunction with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now that we understand a bit about intelligence requirements, we know that we need to focus on one question alone. And I want to emphasize that it is the first and most crucial step to gain most value from actionable threat intel. And that is asking the right question first. It's very critical so you know what to plan for, how to identify your use cases, and define your goals, your objectives. It gives you direction and focus, especially before using MITRE ATT&CK for your threat intel. And here are some examples of questions you can ask. Which APT groups frequently target my organization sector? What types of ransomware frequently target organizations like mine in our geographic region? Which tactics and techniques do these ransomware types employ? So these are some examples of one question that focus on something that you can hone in and narrow your focus on and start getting down on the table and figuring out how to get your answers. I've already given an overview of some of the basics of intelligence, such as intelligence itself, cyber threat intelligence, why it matters, intelligence requirements, and the importance of asking the right question. Now, I didn't discuss intelligence process models and other things of that nature for the sake of time. I'm not going to get into that. But I will discuss one more thing about intelligence, which is the intelligence life cycle, because I do believe it's really important to understand, to know. So, the intelligence life cycle is a series of steps that you must follow in order to have a successful intelligence program. And the very first step is the planning and direction step, which is the most crucial step that you need to make sure that you are asking the right question in first, so that you can hone in and focus on what really matters and not ask the wrong question and waste your time looking for something that's not even there or even relevant. So it is critical, that first stage, to have a very successful intelligence program. And after you have already determined the question that you're going to ask, which, is part of the intelligence requirements, now we're going to move on to the next stage, which is the collection stage. And remember how I mentioned data and information first before intelligence? Well, the collection stage is when you start collecting data and information. And after this stage, this is before we get into the intelligence aspect. The next stage is processing. And that's when we process, the data and the information that we have on hand, that's validating and evaluating if they're relevant, if they are valid or not, if they're useful, things of that nature. And the next step, the fourth step, would be analysis and production. Now, this is like the intelligence part, right? The intelligence analysis phase, where we start gathering a combination of data and information gathered together and determining from our intelligence analysis if they're relevant, accurate, and if they're even complete, so that we can satisfy the original requirements and help answer the question that we asked. And then the last stage is dissemination and feedback. And this is really important, because this is the part where we have to make sure that we have really good threat intel to the best of our ability and deliver that in a format that is understandable to, let's say, the CISO or like the board members of a company that you work for that is worried about a threat actor that's attacking the organization for whatever reason. And it's also really important to make sure that you deliver this good threat intel at the right time, because if it's too late now, it's irrelevant. And another thing I want to mention about the intelligence life cycle is it's important not to skip a step. So let's say you skip the processing part, right? Let's say you asked your question, you collected your data and information, but you didn't even spend time processing. Like, you didn't spend any time to validate or confirm if they are legit data, if they're relevant, if they're useful. You just went straight to the analysis and production stage. That can't be good. So it's very important, to the best of your ability, not to skip a step if you want to have a successful intelligence program. And you're going to learn soon why it matters when you start combining the CTI, the intelligence that you receive, with frameworks that you're going to use it with. And we will get into frameworks soon. And now I'm going to talk about a couple of frameworks. I specifically wanted to throw in the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain for a good reason, in my belief, and that is the fact that it has played an influence on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And because I think it's really important to know about and to have some overview or understanding about it, it would be very helpful for anyone to learn about the cyber kill chain as well as the MITRE ATT&CK framework if they don't know about either one of them or both. So that is why I have both of these frameworks listed. Number one, Lockheed Martin Cyber Kill Chain, and number two, MITRE ATT&CK, which I will get into the nitty gritty on after I explain what the Lockheed Martin Cyber Kill Chain is. What is the Cyber Kill Chain? Well, it's a framework developed by Lockheed Martin, obviously, that is part of the intelligence driven defense model for the identification and prevention of cyber intrusions activity. Now, remember how I talked earlier about the intelligence driven intelligence response, which is essentially the intrusion detection and incident response process? And how I also talked about cyber threat intel playing a role in it by allowing us to learn about an adversary by detecting or identifying an adversary's motivations, capabilities, behaviors, and processes to accomplish a goal. Well, if you remember that, you can see how it plays a role in the development of the cyber kill chain framework for identifying and preventing an intruder from entering a system without permission and compromising it. And in the cyber kill chain, there are 7 steps. And a cyber intruder only succeeds if they successfully completed steps 1 through 6 before reaching the final stage, which is the 7th step, and that is achieving their objective, also known as actions on objectives or exfiltration in other cases. And the cyber kill chain is what I consider the OG framework or original gangster that predates MITRE ATT&CK framework by a few years. And you can see soon how it has played an influence on the development of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, as well as how it has derived its framework from the military kill chain model. And you will start to notice that a lot of cybersecurity models and frameworks are in fact influenced by the military. So in the next slide, I will talk about the military roots of the cyber kill chain. I thought it would be cool to explain a bit about the military roots of the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain because it derived its inspiration from the military kill chain model, also known as the F2T2EA. And I think by gaining an understanding of its military roots, we can kind of start to understand how these frameworks came about, including how MITRE ATT&CK was also influenced by the cyber kill chain. And, it's like a domino effect, right? From military roots, it inspired the cyber kill chain, and then that also inspired MITRE ATT&CK framework. So anyway, we can see that it has about 6 steps, right? Which is find, fix, track, target, engage, and assess. So the first step is identifying a target, finding the target via surveillance or recon, via intelligence means perhaps, and then fix, which is fixing the target's location, obtaining specific coordinates, knowing where they are from existing data or collecting data. And remember how that intelligence life cycle showed you how there is a stage where you collect data. You can kind of see how intelligence played a huge role with the military, which in turn has influenced the cybersecurity industry and the frameworks that we have and the models and so forth. And then we have track, monitor the target's movement, keeping track of the target until a decision has been made, whether we're going to engage the target or not. And then selecting an appropriate weapon or asset to use to on the target to create the desired effects that we want. And that can be applying command and control capabilities, and engaging by applying the weapon to the target, And then the last step, assess, which is evaluating the effects of the attack, including any intelligence gathered at the location. So this is the military kill chain model. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you the cyber kill chain model, and you can kind of see how some of this right here, some of these steps have actually really influenced the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. Here are the 7 steps of the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain that an intruder must successfully complete from steps 1 through 6 in order to successfully accomplish their objective, which is the final stage, actions on objectives. So beginning with the first step is recon. We can see how that got its inspiration from the military kill chain model that began with the find step, which is finding the target via recon and surveillance, so on and so forth. So we see the first step is reconnaissance, and that is doing your research and identification, selection of targets. The next step, the second step, is weaponization. That can be, pairing remote access malware with an exploit into a deliverable payload, for example. The next step, the third step, is delivery. That would be transmission of a weapon to a target, and that would be transmitting that payload to, let's say, an email attachment or website or a USB drive. And then the fourth step, which is exploitation, which is the part where once delivered, the weapon's code is triggered and it's exploiting vulnerable applications or systems. And then we get to the fifth step, which is installation. This weapon, which is a deliverable payload, installs a backdoor on a target system, allowing persistent access. And then the sixth step, which must be completed successfully in order to accomplish the goal, is command and control, or CNC. And this is when the outside server communicates with the weapons, providing hands-on keyboard access inside the target's network. And last but not least, we have the final results. Voila, success. Actions on objectives, and that's when the attacker works to achieve their objective, which is, exfiltration usually, or it can be, like destruction of data or intrusion of another target. Those are just some examples. So from this, we can see from the previous slide how military roots played a role with the military kill chain in developing the cyber kill chain. So why does the cyber kill chain matter? Why am I even talking about it? What does it have anything to do with MITRE ATT&CK, right? Well, it matters because the cyber kill chain enhances visibility into an attack, right? And it enriches an analyst's understanding of an adversary's tactics, techniques, and procedures, also known as TTPs. And because it was developed in 2011, a few years before MITRE ATT&CK was officially released in 2015, but was, I guess, technically kind of in development since 2013, you'll notice that MITRE ATT&CK basically expanded on the cyber kill chain, but took it to the next level, made it more in depth. And you will see how from the cyber kill chain, that security teams, like blue teams, had begun to visualize an adversary's goals by following the steps that they would take and come up with a strategy to prevent or mitigate that adversary or attacker, right? And it matters because here's the keyword, right? Tactics, techniques, and procedures. What does the cyber kill chain do? It lets you have more visibility into an attack to understand an adversary's tactics, techniques, and procedures. And this is the very beginning stage of doing that. And MITRE ATT&CK expanded upon that, took it to the next level by allowing us to have a better visualization and understanding of an adversary's TTPs. And you will see why this matters, because it really did play a role in some way for the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now let's talk about MITRE ATT&CK, shall we? Finally, we can get to the nitty-gritty and talk about MITRE ATT&CK. First, I want to give a little bit of history regarding who developed MITRE ATT&CK and how it came about. Here we have a man named Blake Schramm. He worked for the NSA and joined MITRE in 2013 to be the red team lead for an experimental project called Fort Meade Experiment, or FMX. And in this process of the development of this project with his team, he accidentally stumbled upon creating the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which was originally a spreadsheet. And so he co-founded MITRE ATT&CK and led the team that was in charge of its development. And in 2015, it was officially released to the public as an open source framework. And he did explain that he had no idea that the MITRE ATT&CK framework was going to become so popular and widely used in the cybersecurity. And now I believe he is the principal security researcher for Microsoft 365 Defender team. So here is a condensed timeline of the evolution of MITRE ATT&CK. I left out a lot of other details in between, but this is more or less, the evolution of how it came about. So in 2013, as I explained, it was in development. It was kind of the result of Project FMX by accident. And then in 2015, it officially released to the public, was open source, and it only had 9 tactics and 96 techniques. It was very basic, and there were 3 from the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. As I explained to you, it did play a part in influencing MITRE ATT&CK. And then in 2018, Attack V1, or the official version 1, was released, which contained 10 tactics and 188 techniques. And over time, over the years, multiple versions came out, 11 more. And now most recently, in October of 2022, last year, version 12 was released. And the latest update includes new campaigns and additions or changes of APT groups and additional techniques, softwares and mitigations. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of techniques and sub-techniques added in there. MITRE ATT&CK. We hear about it all the time in cybersecurity, but what is it? What exactly is it? For those who don't know, I will explain to you what MITRE ATT&CK is. Taken from the MITRE ATT&CK website, the definition of MITRE ATT&CK is a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations. The attack knowledge base is used as a foundation for the development of specific threat models and methodologies in the private sector, in government, and in the cybersecurity product and service community. Basically, MITRE ATT&CK is a framework, and it's like a library of all of the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are used by adversaries, and they help you to develop a threat model or decide, what you're going to do on the defense end or what you're going to plan to do on the other end if you want to do adversarial simulation, for example, and copy an APT group, for example, an advanced persistent threat group. And in this next slide, I will explain what tactics, techniques, and procedures are, because they play a massive role in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. As you know, the MITRE ATT&CK framework is open source, and it can be used for enterprise mobile, or industrial control systems, or ICS. And we know it's a knowledge base of adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures. And it's used by an adversary or for defensive engagement. So, who can use the MITRE ATT&CK framework? Who can use the MITRE ATT&CK matrix? Well, you can see here the blue team defenders, red team attackers, purple team, and management. So the blue teamers are on the defense. They are your cybersecurity analysts, SOC analysts, threat intel analysts, threat hunters, incident response team, or digital forensic investigators, right? And then you have your red team attackers, which are on the offense. They can be physical and digital pen testers, social engineers, and red team cybersecurity engineers. And they use this for adversarial simulations if they want to simulate a particular APT group, for example. And then you have the purple team, which combines both the red and blue team approach, and they can be purple team cybersecurity analysts and engineers, or even ethical hackers, advisors, and consultants. And lastly, management can use this as well. It can be the CISO, a cybersecurity director, or even cybersecurity managers that are using this for reference to gain a greater understanding of their adversary. And of course, technically, anyone could kind of use it. You yourself, if you wanted to understand an APT group, you can plug in some of the tactics and techniques that they use and pretend that you are on the blue team side or the red team side to gain a deeper understanding of particular adversaries, for example. The purpose of MITRE ATT&CK is really to help the blue team visualize defensive coverage, create analytics, and help them to prevent and even mitigate an adversary. And for the red team, it lets them help the blue team by revealing gaps in defenses when they plan and act upon an adversary simulation by pretending to be a particular APT group or whatever. And of course, the purple team would be a combination of both that can use it to both help them understand, defensive coverage that they need to see and figure out what they need to do to mitigate an attacker, as well as how they can simulate an attacker as well. So the purpose is really to help the security team have a thorough understanding of what threats are out there and how they can respond and detect them as well. So the MITRE ATT&CK framework is mainly composed of tactics, techniques, and procedures, also known as TTPs. But you will see on the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, which is the visual representation that pretty much looks like an expanded spreadsheet, that it only has tactics, techniques, and sub-techniques. But more on that later. So right now, we want to know what the TTPs are. So on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, a tactic is a representation of a goal that an adversary or threat actor is trying to achieve. So it is the what and the why. So what I mean by that is it represents what the adversary is trying to do and why they're trying to do it by carrying out specific techniques or sub-techniques. So it's like the what and the why they're doing a technique or sub-technique. And a technique represents the different ways that an adversary can achieve their goals or objectives of the tactic. It's basically how the technique is done, like how they're able to accomplish their goal. And lastly, a procedure represents the steps that an adversary takes to execute a technique or a sequence of techniques. Well, when you look at the attack matrix, which is more or less the visual representation of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you'll just see mainly just tactics, techniques, and sub-techniques. Currently, as it stands, based on the 12th version of MITRE ATT&CK, it consists of 14 tactics, 193 techniques, and 401 sub-techniques. And of course, there are also procedures that are categorized in the attack framework as techniques observed in the wild, in the procedure examples section of the technique pages. So you have to kind of navigate on the attack.mitre.org webpage to kind of see what that is. And also, there's a lot of APT groups on there, hundreds of them, and hundreds of pieces of software, such as different types of ransomware that is used, that you can also find on the website by navigating on there. And there's also mitigations that you can look at as well. But the main thing we need to know is that the attack matrix is mainly consisting of tactics, techniques, and sub-techniques, which I will show an example of shortly here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the pyramid of pain. As you can see here, there is a pyramid, and from the bottom to the top, it shows you the levels of difficulty. And it starts from trivial at the bottom to easy, simple, annoying, challenging, and tough, which is the hardest level of difficulty at the top. And this pyramid of pain was created by an incident responder named David Bianco. And the purpose was to give us a visualization of how much pain we can cause an adversary by detecting and responding to whatever is being done based on this pyramid here. So what I mean by that is, since it is increasing in difficulty and pain from bottom to top, when we get to the very top, which is the 6th level of pain, TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, it causes the most pain for adversaries when we detect and respond quickly to TTPs. Now, if we, block them from, let's say, network and the firewall, it can be like annoying, right? But the ultimate one is TTPs, where you can really create some pain here. And as you can see, this pyramid of pain also illustrates the types of IOCs, or indicators of compromise, that can help you detect an adversary's activities. And that starts from bottom to top. Hash values, which are trivial, IP addresses, domain names, signatures, malware, libraries, and strings. But the ultimate one is the TTPs that we attack by detecting and responding to them, that really create the most pain for adversaries. And also, this pyramid of pain can also help you determine just how sophisticated an adversary is. Because you might have some script kiddies that are just messing around with, changing up the integrity of, software, messing up hash values or something of that nature. And, these are just like little examples. But as you go up the pyramid, you can see that more likely this adversary becomes more sophisticated or more advanced. So this is another way to look at the pyramid of pain, not just from how much damage it can be done, but also to kind of have an idea of how sophisticated our adversary may be, and how advanced they are to pull off whatever it is that they're trying to do. What you see here is a visual representation of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and this is called the attack matrix. And for this case, it is the attack matrix used for the enterprise, which is the most popular one that's being used. If you go to the website right now to https://attack.mitre, that's MITRE.org, you will see the attack matrix on the first page. You might have to scroll down a little bit to see it in full view. And you'll notice that it kind of looks like a spreadsheet, but it's more of an expanded one. And when you look at it, you will notice that at the very top, where I had these numbered, you will see categories. And these are the tactics. These are the what and the why an adversary is going to carry out their techniques and or sub-techniques. So the first tactic is reconnaissance. The second one is resource development. Third is initial access. Fourth is execution. Fifth is persistence. And it goes on and on and on all the way till impact. And you can see that under each tactic, there are a number of techniques listed vertically. So below here, you can see that reconnaissance has about 10 techniques. And if you click on the gray part, the little 2 dash lines or whatever that is, if you click on it to expand it, you can also see sub-techniques, which are basically techniques within a technique. And this is what the attack matrix looks like, showing you hundreds of techniques and 14 tactics. And you can easily take a look at it right now on the website for free. So again, the 14 tactics from left to right on the attack matrix are reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, execution, and the list goes on and on until we end at impact. So you may wonder, what are the 193 techniques and 401 sub-techniques and procedures? Well, there's too many to name, and it's impossible to memorize unless you have a superhuman memory, which I'm sure many of you don't have that rare ability. But if you want to know more about these techniques or sub-techniques, I will show you how you can do that. You can take a look at the tactics on the attack matrix and click to expand to see the technique, and click on it, and it should send you to a web page on the link that you click that explains more in detail about the techniques, and it may even show mitigations and procedures that have been done as well. So let me show you how you can do that. So once you are on the attack matrix, you can, on the website, attack.mitre.org, you can go ahead and go to the tactic that you want to take a look at. And for this case, I wanted to expand on the technique of gather victim network information. And now I can see a handful of sub-techniques. And each sub-technique has an ID. And that would be, for this case, IP addresses would be T1590.005. And when you click on it, it will lead you to a web page that explains more about it, and it can even show you like procedures that have been used or mitigations that can be done. So really try to get familiarized with the MITRE ATT&CK framework by checking out the website and playing around, navigating on the web page and messing around with the attack matrix. So after clicking on the sub-technique IP addresses, I land on a web page that gives more details about it, including procedure examples of how it was used, including mitigations and how you can detect it. And also, there are references that I can also take a look at as well. And when you navigate on the MITRE ATT&CK website, you can also see how it does give you more information on mitigations and groups. So that's where APT groups are, and software, which has a plethora of different types of ransomware you can learn about. And there's just plenty of resources on here. So definitely familiarize yourself with it, and you can learn so much and become very knowledgeable with threat intel and learning more about your adversary by doing that. I thought I would also show you what the first version of attack looked like. It was very, I guess you could say, basic, very spreadsheet-like for sure. It only had 10 tactics at the top and 188 techniques, but no sub-techniques. And you can see how much has evolved since, which kind of gives you an understanding that cybersecurity is ever evolving, and there's always going to be new techniques that come out and sub techniques, and it's just amazing to see how much has been built upon the MITRE ATT&CK framework in just a matter of a few years. Now that we've gained an understanding of the MITRE ATT&CK framework and the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, the question is, how can we keep track of an adversary's tactics and techniques and start mapping their behavior using MITRE ATT&CK? Well, we can start mapping with the Attack Matrix Navigator, which I will show you what it looks like in a bit. So what is the Attack Navigator? Based on its GitHub website, as you can see listed on the source below, you can check that out. The Attack Navigator is a web-based tool for annotating and exploring attack matrices. It can be used to visualize defensive coverage, red team, blue team planning, and the frequency of detected techniques, and more. And I'll show you what it looks like. Before I show you what it looks like to use the Attack Matrix Navigator, I want to give a use case for a realistic scenario of how the Attack Matrix Navigator can be used and how we can map on it. So for this use case, let's just say that you are the blue team lead working in cybersecurity for a government agency for the USA. And recently there has been major concerns that your government agency may get attacked by an advanced persistent threat group, APT-29, from Russia, because they've been relentlessly targeting the U.S. government with cyber attacks. But so far, your particular agency, which can be, let's say, Department of Transportation or something, just an example. Let's just say your agency has not detected any suspicious activity in its networks or systems, but you're worried that your agency could be targeted next because the news continues to broadcast more and more government agencies and departments are getting hit with cyber attacks left and right. And because you want to stay informed, you have decided to start planning how you're going to defend your agency against APT-29 and potentially similar APT groups, threat actors from Russia. And in doing so, you start by asking a right question first. What tactics and techniques does the Russian APT-29 group use? So because our question is what tactics and techniques APT-29 has used, we're going to use the attack matrix navigator and create our own layer, name it APT-29, and pull up APT-29 so we can see it color-coded what tactics and techniques are used. And now we have a visual representation of what APT-29 uses. And this is going to be very helpful for us. Because you have mapped out the tactics and techniques that the Russian APT-29 uses, now you can start having a better visualization of what this adversary does, including how you're going to plan for your defenses and how you're going to fill any gaps that you may have in your network and your system and so forth. So you notice that one of the tactics is account discovery. And because of that, you want to make sure that this cannot be used against your organization or your agency. You start getting paranoid. You want to make sure no one without admin privileges can log on an admin account. You don't want, these admin accounts to be enumerated, and you want to ensure the proper roles are assigned to their appropriate accounts. Then you start wanting to make sure that no default passwords are used. And you start checking to make sure that all accounts used on every machine are not exposed or cannot be enumerated. And this is the part where you decide, okay, I want to find out what are the mitigations for account discovery. And you click on that, you expand on it, and you go to the web page and you see the mitigations that can be done for account discovery on the MITRE ATT&CK webpage. Now you're going to check if you're missing anything because you want to start plugging in any holes and covering all your bases. So you click on the account discovery tactics and you want to learn more about it on the MITRE ATT&CK webpage. And you look to see if there are any mitigations that can be done for it. And lo and behold, there is. And now you see that the mitigation is operating system configuration. And it tells you that this mitigation can prevent administrator accounts from being enumerated when an application is elevating through UAC, since it can lead to the disclosure of account names. And it tells you where the registry key is located in the directory path that you can see on the screen. And it can be disabled through GPO. And it gives you more information on that. So now you know that this is a way to mitigate that. You want to make sure that you're covering all your bases and you're plugging in your holes, right? So you're checking the registry key on your end and you realize that it was not disabled. So now you realize that it's allowing the enumeration of administrator account names, and you're freaking out. And because you know the mitigation that needs to be done, you automatically disable it through GPO. And you can continue this process of figuring out, what needs to be mitigated, or, checking to see if you have those bases covered by looking at the tactics and techniques of what particular APT groups do or use. And that is how mapping with the attack matrix navigator can become very useful. So like I said, after you discover you had a hole, you start looking at the rest of the techniques that are used by APT-29 and other tactics, and check if you need to fill any gaps of defense elsewhere. Or you may even start planning with the red team to create an adversarial simulation of APT-29's behavior so that you can be prepared to respond if need be, and to better detect their movements, right? And you can even bring a purple team on board as a result. And since you plugged in your holes, essentially the result more likely would be that your agency has not been attacked because you've been trying to keep it as secure as possible. And now you're staying on your toes to keep it that way and maintain it that way. So essentially, that is the power of MITRE ATT&CK. And that concludes my talk on MITRE ATT&CK. Go team MITRE ATT&CK. So now you can check out some resources on MITRE ATT&CK if you would like, listed on the links on the screen. There's also a link for the Attack Navigator, the Lockheed Martin Cyber Kill Chain, if you want to take a look at that, and an article that I wrote regarding how you can use MITRE ATT&CK for threat intelligence. And of course, there is also a link that I provided for Attack IQ's Academy, where you can learn more about MITRE ATT&CK. They have really great resources and educational courses that you can take a look at to learn more about MITRE ATT&CK, and I highly recommend them. And that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for listening and being patient getting this far with me. I hope this talk provided insight on MITRE ATT&CK and provided some value for you. This is my first official cybersecurity talk that I've done, so I hope that it was enjoyable. And if you're enthusiastic about MITRE ATT&CK and cybersecurity like I am, feel welcome to connect with me as well. Once again, my name is Mars Groves, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, I am giving away free WebGap. It's a browser isolation platform technology that essentially puts an air gap between you and the malware by physically isolating your web browsing activity away from your computer and devices. That way threats don't get into your local machine. You can use the browser in a secure form, and I'm giving it away for free for all students, especially those of you who like to do OSINT. You're welcome to use it. Just please contact me. You can reach out to me on these various social media platforms on LinkedIn, Twitter, and also on Discord. I am on the VTF server, so if you find my handle, you can reach out to me as well. Just reach out, say hello, and that you watch my talk. I accept feedback. Again, this is my first official talk, and I am friendly, so I'd love to connect with any of you, no matter where you are on your cybersecurity journey. So again, thank you for coming to my talk about MITRE ATT&CK, and I hope you enjoyed it, and you know where to find me. And thank you to the entire team at Virtually Testing Foundation for providing free resources and making learning cybersecurity possible to anyone around the world. Take care, y'all. Bye now.